Time for the South Africans to join the party. Let's see what round 2 has in store for us. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. Okay, so round 2 of the URC. We had a fantastic round 1. Lots of tight games, all going right down to the wire. Even had a draw in there as well. So, this week will have to go some to top that. But we have the South Africans in the mix, and that's, brilliant to see them there. And just touching on what I talked about last week, I won't go too much into it, but, the idea that, South Africa don't belong in the URC, to me, is crazy for people putting that out there. Like, they brought so much to the table, like, a different rugby culture, fans who are very passionate about the game, very knowledgeable. They brought big TV money. They brought big crowds as well. Even though, you look at their stadiums, you think they don't look all that full, but you have to remember they're in really big stadiums, so they're getting bigger crowds than a lot of the other teams, even though it doesn't obviously look like that when you watch it on the TV. But they're bringing all this to the table and being very competitive. They're driving standards. They're making the other teams have to get better, and it's just making the whole league better as well. So I don't understand why anyone would want to have the URC without them, or to go and join the British and Irish League, which was muted. We talked about that last week, or why anyone would want to leave the URC, honestly, because for me, it's the league that's really on the up. I think this one and then Major League Rugby in the States are the two big movers at the minute in terms of, everything now is a product, like in a brand or whatever, right? But getting the product right. But I'm kind of old school where, like, I hate people when people talk about like things being a franchise or, for movies and books or whatever. So, but for me, let's look at the old school style. Okay. The URC is bringing competitive games. We have big rivalries, or you can see them developing, because those South African teams are in the mix there. And, it's gonna make the league just better and better, but also make the teams in the league better, so that you're going to see more URC teams be more competitive in Europe because of the standards that they have now in the domestic league as well. And that's going to bring everyone along with them as well. I know the Welsh teams are struggling at the minute, and I feel for them. But I feel like, the problems with the Welsh regions is not the URC. It's the WRU and the structures that they have. Like, if I was in charge, honestly, if I was in charge in WRU, what I'd say is, listen, these are the regions we have. We need to back them. We need to give them the money that they need. And we need to put a structure in below them to develop talent to come into those teams as well. So that, and connect it to what's there already, the club system, etc., so that you make that relevant again too. And it's a big task to do, but you have to look at the other nations in the league as well. I think you have to look at, like, start with the Irish teams first. Like, if you look at around round about the turn of professionalism, right? Like in Ireland, it was like, it was a disaster, really, for Irish rugby, where we were, like, on the world stage, not very competitive. We could, knock over the odd team, etc. But for the most part, other than, Ulster winning the old Heineken Cup, and being the first Irish province to do it as well, we weren't producing much success, really, at the provincial level or at the national level either. But they put in a plan, and it took a long time. First of all, we saw, like, Munster becoming very competitive, going on that that journey, that quest for Heineken Cup success and delivering, winning three of them, right? And that was kind of the backbone of the Irish team that won, the Grand Slam in 2009, along with a improving Leinster team. And then kind of Leinster took up the mantle from there. And now you're at the point now where I feel like we've got, we've got competitive provinces now. Some of them will dip up and down, but for the most part, they're going to be somewhere up there near the top half of the table. But it didn't come overnight, right? And then next, you look at the Italian teams. Like you had Benetton, and then it was Benetton and Zebre now, right? But it was Benetton and was it Aroni or something like that, right? Before, and they were so bad they got chucked out, right? And they got replaced by Zebre. But like Benetton used to be what Zebre are now, whipping boys of the league, and they've built year on year, and they won the Rainbow Cup. They've been competitive in the league. They were like up near the top of the league for most of the season last year as well. And you don't get there, just by luck. And they put in the hard work, and it paid off for them. Then next, you look at the Scottish teams. Like Glasgow and Edinburgh again. Teams who, in the past were just kind of, making up the numbers, honestly. And then in recent years, we've seen, Edinburgh producing some good performances, but Glasgow being the more consistent of the two and being up there at the sharp end, but not being able to quite get it done. But you could see that improvement coming. And then once they got over that kind of mental block in the knockout stages, then they deliver silverware. And again, it didn't happen overnight. It was something that they had to work on, and they delivered in the end. I think that's what's ahead for the Welsh regions, and it's all about whether Welsh rugby. So when I talk about Welsh rugby, I'm talking about the the WRU, the clubs, the fans, and the regions. Do they have the stomach for the fight? Is the thing, right? And I think if they do, you can see already there's shoots of improvement. Ospreys last year, really good season. Cardiff, seem to be building something there as well. And, Dragons, probably so far this season have produced more than they did last season, honestly. And then Scarlets as well, kind of, the first, I was impressed with how they played in Benetton as well last week too. So, there is a roadmap there for them to follow. And, if they stick it out, I think we're going to see it where, all of the nations are going to have competitive teams. And, it's going to be a case of if you slip up a couple of times, it's going to be the difference between being in that top 8 or being down like in 12th or 13th place or something. I think that's how competitive the league is going to get. We saw it last season. I think it's just going to get more and more competitive. But I said I was only going to touch on it, and I spent ages talking about it. But let's move on. Let's get on to the games for this week. So we're going to start with the Friday games. So both are kicking off at 7:35 BST, so Irish and UK time. And first game up is Leinster versus Dragons. So it's third versus fourth. But we've only had one set of games. So the league positions at the moment, and South African teams, they haven't even had one game. But league positions not that relevant at the minute. Next week we'll start looking at or after these games, to say, we'll start looking at the league table. But it's not going to take shape until 5 or 6 rounds in anyway. But this one at the Aviva Stadium, we got Leinster. They went away to Scotstoun against Edinburgh last week, and they come up with a win. It was a really tough test for them as well. I thought Edinburgh played, particularly well. Dragons, they beat Ospreys last week as well, in a tight game, and Ospreys were by far and away the best of the Welsh region last year, so that's a good feather in their cap. Now Leinster away would be a massive scalp for them to take as well. but I have to be realistic here. I think Leinster definitely going to win, but I think Dragons, from what we saw, at least in the first game against Ospreys, I think there's going to be a bit more fight in them this year. And that's good to see, because I think last year they just kind of heads dropping and stuff in games, not necessarily, visibly, but you could definitely see how, teams pulled away from them in a lot of the games. I think they're going to stick in a little bit more than they did last year, and I think that's going to get them maybe a couple of extra wins on top of last year as well. So, but for this one, I think I'm going to go for a Leinster win. It's going to be interesting to see what team Leinster put out as well, given that, a lot of players didn't travel over to Scotland last week. Also on Friday, then we have defending champions Glasgow Warriors versus Benetton. So this is 10th versus 6th. This one's at Scotstoun. I think I said it was the Hive Leinster were playing at, not Scotstoun last week, because they were against Edinburgh, of course. But Glasgow, neither of these teams have won. Glasgow defending champions. They, narrow loss against Ulster. They were much the better team, in that game as well against Ulster, and how they didn't win, I'm not too sure. And again, I don't think it was a case of not taking their chances. I think they just didn't get enough clear-cut chances, would be my argument there. Like that, a lot of their dominance, in the scrum and the line out, etc., and then like the line speed, also like the moving the ball, the way they were finding gaps in the Ulster defence as well. They just never really put enough of it together to actually get a bit of a lead, and kind of drop Ulster in the end. Benetton, home draw against Scarlets last week. Probably would have looked at that thinking, that it should be a win first up, given where both teams finished in the league last year. But season on season, you can't just look at last year's table and think, okay, well, we finished higher than them, we should beat them. So, Benetton, I think, will learn from that. Benetton, we saw last year as well, much more competitive on the road than they were, in previous seasons, but going to Scotstoun against a Glasgow team, who now need a win to kickstart their own season. I think it's a tough ask for them. I still think they're going to be competitive, but I think Glasgow, we're gonna see them probably create a few more chances. We're definitely going to see that maul again, because it's one of the biggest weapons in the URC at the minute. The maul is so good. The variation, and not just that they vary it in terms of, they call it a different move or whatever. I think when they've got it set up, they still have options of what they're going to do in terms of, is Johnny Matches going to break off? Are they going to try and roll it? Are they just going to, steamroll over or whatever? There seems to be a lot of variations within variations, as it were, for them. And I think that's in this one, it's going to be enough for them, I think, especially given how good they were in the backs play as well. I think it's going to be a Glasgow win in that one as well. So champions to get off the mark there with their first win of the season. Then on to the Saturday game. So first game, 11:55. It's kind of a weird time, but it is in South Africa. So I think there it'll be 12:55, I think, if I'm right. I could be wrong though. But it's Lions versus Ulster. So it's 15th versus 5th, but Lions are in 15th simply because they haven't played yet. And it's at Emirates Airlines Park. And, last year and the last couple of years as well, Lions are talking about how the league is building. I think the Lions are one of the teams within the league who are building as well. You can see there that there's the core of something special in that Lions squad, in the Lions club, or I don't know, did they call them provinces or whatever in South Africa, but the Lions, I think there's something building there. You can see like there's a lot of talent there, and it just feels like they just need to maybe take another step up. And if they do that, then it means, consistently getting into the playoffs and then building from there as well. And if that feels like the trajectory they're on at the minute. But, last season, they had that chance to make the playoffs and they didn't take it. So this year, they're going to have to be, a little more ruthless, I think, in terms of just stacking up the points. Playing against an Ulster team who last week, we just talked about it, they knocked, defending champions Glasgow over as well, up in Belfast, but they were second best. And now they're going to have players missing as well because of the emerging Ireland squad too. So I think it's going to be a tough ask to go down to South Africa and get a win in this one. So I'm going to back the Lions to open their season with a win. But I think Ulster, they've got Richie Murphy in there now. It's his first full season. He's last year he just had to manage the situation till the end of the season. Now he's in there, he can really put in his own systems, but that takes time. So I'm imagining that Ulster are going to be up and down anyway. So it wouldn't be a shock that they get a win to start the season and then maybe get exposed a little bit in South Africa. But let's see how they go, because the game hasn't been played yet. So maybe they will surprise us. But yeah, I'm expecting the Lions win in that one. Next then is the 2:00 kickoff. So this is the Bulls versus Edinburgh. So it's 16th versus 9th, and it's at Loftus Versfeld. So the Bulls, last time they played, and the last time they played at Loftus as well, was that final against Glasgow. And the Bulls have been, they're the team who've been closest to winning the URC without actually lifting the trophy. They've been finalists twice, and if it's almost one of those ones where, you were kind of expecting. I was talking about before in terms of, let's say, look at the Irish provinces, right? With the way the Irish provinces were going, and Leinster before the URC being dominant, it looked like the next team to produce in terms of the Irish was going to be Ulster. But then Munster came along with their revival and kind of pipped them to it. And you wonder if that's going to happen with the Bulls, that the Stormers have been champions. The Bulls have been close a couple of times, but are, maybe the Lions or even the Sharks going to pip them to that prize. But, there's certainly, you look at that Bulls squad and just the outfit as well. Like, it feels like that it's in their blood. Success is in their blood, and that some kind of trophy, whether it's going to be in Europe or the URC, isn't that far off for them. And whether it's going to be this season or not, I don't know. But as I said, first game up since that final, they're going to want to kind of lay a few ghosts to rest, especially playing another Scottish team, in Loftus. And, I'm expecting a big performance from them. Edinburgh, I thought, were really good against Leinster last week, but this is, a big test for them again. Like, they're not having an easy start to the season. The last few seasons, Edinburgh have actually started this season pretty well and kind of fallen off towards the end. Now, here, if they lose this one, then, two defeats on the trot, they're going to have to then try and kickstart their season from there. But, they look good last week. And sometimes in a situation like this, when you have that, tough competitive game under your belt and you're going in against a team in their first game of the season, maybe you can catch them cold, and maybe Edinburgh can do that. But in terms of just prediction here, I think it's going to be a Bulls win. Okay, next time we have the 3:00 kickoff, and this is Zebre versus Munster. So 12th versus 2nd, and this is in Stadio Sergio Lanfranchi. And, Zebre, last year, so competitive at home. They came close as well to knocking, the last 2 seasons they've come close to knocking some big names over, over there in Italy. They almost beat Leinster a couple of seasons ago, and last year they had a couple of close calls as well. And, you wonder, Munster, are they gonna upset Munster? That would be a big scalp for them. But, Munster, they got that win against Connacht. It was a fantastic game as well between the two of them. And I feel like, Munster last year, one of the big problems of Munster felt was the midfield pairing. And, last week the midfield, Nankivell was excellent, and he had, it was Farrell beside him, right? Farrell actually moved from Connacht, and they two of them went pretty well together there in the midfield. So I think the midfield's going to be a little more settled for them, and because of that, then I feel like they're going to have a better season as well, just kind of in terms of their attacking play. But one thing to note from last week as well is there were a lot of handling errors from Munster, so they're going to want to be a bit slicker this week. But I think it's going to be, again, a competitive game, because Zebre at home now are not the soft touches that they were in the past, but I still think Munster have enough to get the win there. Okay, next then we have the 5:15 kickoff. This is a Welsh derby, so Scarlets versus Cardiff, 7th versus 1st, so Cardiff up there, top of the league. Parky Scarlets is the venue as well. So we start the Scarlets, excellent draw away to Benetton for them. A few years ago, like maybe 5-6 years ago, say, Scarlets would have been disappointed, only coming out with a draw from Benetton, but times have changed, Benetton have changed, and the relative power between the two has changed as well. But Scarlets, talked about it last week, and I talked about it last season as well. They have the ability to score amazing tries. They play some really entertaining rugby, but they didn't really have, much grit or much dog in the team. We saw a lot of that last week from them, getting, doing the hard yards, getting a maul try as well in that draw against Benetton. And it really shows that they've worked on a lot of stuff, over the summer during the break, and hopefully that's going to pay dividends for them this year. Cardiff, last year, young team, they, I felt like, started the season very well, and then kind of lost away a little bit after that. But then, that can happen with young players. I think now they've maybe got a better balance in their squad in terms of just, having, some experience in there as well to guide those young players too. And, last week, one thing they'd be worried about is last week they looked like they're cruising against Zebre, and then they let them come back at them, and Zebre ended up with losing bonus points. So, this one, I feel it, fact that they're away from home, Scarlets are going to be up for it, and, it's a Welsh derby, so they won't be able to do the same thing, I don't think. Scarlets have that ability to score tries almost from anywhere if you give them a sniff, and if they do the same thing there, I think Scarlets will pip them to the win. And this honestly is a hard one to pick, and other than the fact that I don't think any team has ever drawn 2 games in a row in the URC, I'd almost predict a draw here. And I'm still sitting on the fence because I'm trying to make my mind up who I'm going to back, but I'm going to go for a Cardiff win for them to continue that winning streak. But it's going to be a tight one. It could go either way, honestly. But my pick is Cardiff. Okay, next then, the 7:35 kickoff. So the first one on the block is Connacht versus the Sharks. So 8th versus 13th, and this is at the Dexcom Stadium. So Connacht, really building a nice stadium over there, and just shows again what we're talking about at the start, how the URC is growing, and teams wouldn't be building. You've got Leinster redeveloping the RDS, Connacht dealing with the Dexcom as well. Teams would not be doing that if the league was on its knees, like it's struggling. There wouldn't be the money there. There wouldn't be the need there either for it. You'd be looking at half-empty stadiums. So it's great to see that. But back to this one. So Connacht, we'll start with last year. So last year, missed out on the playoffs, really blew it, a couple of rounds towards the end where they were playing against 14 men against the Lions. It got absolutely destroyed, and that was pretty much their playoff chances gone, even though mathematically they still could have made it. Sharks, I think, did they finish 13th in the league last year? They finished down there somewhere. I think they did, right? So they were 13th, then Scarlets 14th, and then Dragons 15th and Zebre 16th. I think that's how it ended. They were definitely 13th or 14th anyway. But they did win the Challenge Cup as well in Europe. So that was a big, big thing for them. And I talked about as well last year how their league, in terms of their league, position, it wasn't really and the results as well weren't really matching up to their performances. Their performances are actually pretty decent, but they just weren't, getting the wins on the board. Connacht last year were very up and down in terms of their performances. They'd be brilliant one week and absolutely dire the next week. And even within games, they could be brilliant for 20 minutes and then dire for 20 minutes and go up and down as well within the game like that. So, hoping for a bit more consistency from them this year. It feels like, again, new coaching team in there, second season for them. And it feels like this is where, we're hopefully going to see, what's been put in place, coming through. I felt like they were more competitive against Munster, than we've seen them, being able to come back so many times as well. That we see them kind of previously in those types of games. So that kind of stands well to them. The Sharks, obviously haven't played yet this season. So it's, it's not, in terms of it be going away, they're definitely, tougher tasks, let's say, in terms of the team you're playing, but going to Dexcom and the way the wind can get up there, especially just looking out the window now, I'm on the opposite side of the country and we've got wind and rain here at the minute. So over in Galway, it's probably pretty tasty. So that could be in store for them for the weekend. So, that's going to be a big challenge for them in terms of, coping with that. And Connacht at home as well can be very competitive. They're obviously like the poor man of the Irish provinces, but they're still a decent team, and kind of similar with the Sharks as well. The Sharks were like the fourth place of the South African teams as well, but doesn't mean that they're a bad team. So I think two decent teams, probably looking to do better than they did last year in the league, but this is the thing with leagues, all right, is that for one team to go up, another team has to go down, just the way it is. So I think it's a big game for both teams. Connacht came close to Munster last week, but if they lose two in a row, suddenly it doesn't look that great a start to the season for them. The Sharks maybe could afford, to lose this one and then, maybe pick up a win somewhere else on their tour up north, but still they'd love to win that game. And again, it's another difficult one to pick. And this is the great thing about the URC and how competitive it is that before it used to be a case of you'd look down the list and you go, okay, well, all of these teams are going to win at home, and maybe this team and this team have a chance of winning away, and that's it. But now it's not the case anymore. So many teams can go away from home and win. But having said that, I'm going to go for a home win. I'm going to go for Connacht to win that one. Okay, so then the last game we have is Ospreys versus the Stormers. It's 11 versus 14, but again, with South African teams, their placings from 13 to 16 are only because they haven't played yet. This is in Dunraven Brewery Field, so Ospreys' new home for this season. Really, they've got to, hopefully, they're going to have a proper home that, is theirs, that they can be, developing, etc. Because kind of moving around too much, not really going to be great for them, I think. But looking at these two teams, so you got Stormers, who were the inaugural URC champions. They got to the final then the year after against Munster, and then they got to let me think, it was a quarterfinal, right? Yeah, they got to the quarterfinal, and I'm trying to think who was it that beat them. Was it? Let me double check this, because I don't remember now. Do you think I'd remember, right? But it's just the way things go, right? I'm blanking on who beat them. It might have been Glasgow. And of course, whatever it is about this, there we go. I was going to say whatever it is about the thing, it doesn't seem to work properly, but there we go. Okay, so Stormers. It was Glasgow, yeah. Glasgow beat them in the quarterfinal, but they've been competitive every year. They've been right up there, in terms of league position as well. Maybe not as high on the log last year going into the playoffs as they were in previous seasons, but still very competitive team. And then Ospreys, who that miracle last couple of rounds got them into 8th place. So for them, I think to progress from last year, these are the kind of games they need to be targeting to win. But we saw them last week against the Dragons. A game again that you would have expected based on how things went last year, that Ospreys were going to win it, but they didn't. So I think this is a big test for them, and I feel like Stormers, it's not often you see Stormers play badly, honestly. Now, every team does have their off days, but I think Stormers, they're just the consistency of their play. And because of that, I think I'm going to go for, this is going to be one of the teams I think is going to win away. I think that they're going to, I'm not going to say upset, because as I said, Stormers are kind of a big team in the URC. But, I think Ospreys, given their performance last year, would certainly feel like they're in with, with a decent shout of winning this one, given that they're playing at home. But and again, the first game at home at a new home for them as well. So I think it's gonna be a tight one. But I think Stormers are just gonna have that little bit of nous to get those extra few points or that score towards the end to maybe give them the win. So I'm going to go for Stormers win in that one. And I'm looking back now at the fixtures, and for some of my predictions, I honestly couldn't tell you who I picked, because I'm looking down the list and thinking that one's going to be close, that one's going to be close, that one's going to be close, and it's just brilliant. It's an amazing feeling, that the a league back when it was like what was it before, the Pro 14 was something like that. Back when it was that or wherever, and the one before as well, the Pro 12. A lot of the games you just looked at and you're going, yeah, I know who's going to win that. I know who's going to win that. I know who's going to win that. And there were very few ones where you'd look at and you go, oh, maybe that's going to be close. Now it's just flipped completely, and there are very few ones where you think that team is dead cert to win. So long may it continue is what I say. But one thing is not going to continue is me talking too much, because probably going on too much again. but I just love my rugby. And, you know, again, I just have to say thank you to everyone, you know, who has kind of stuck with me. You know, I know I took a bit of a break, but I'm back and I'm really enjoying, you know, watching the rugby, reporting on the rugby, putting these videos together, etc., and also just interacting with you guys down in the comments as well. So keep those coming. Again, you know, I don't like asking, but I will ask if you wouldn't mind maybe, you know, hitting that like button and sharing maybe with someone you think, you know, would find it interesting as well. I really would appreciate it, because it does absolutely massive, you know, wonders for how many people actually get to see the video if you do that. But I'm going to shut up now, and we're all going to hopefully enjoy the rugby this weekend.